Hi. So we just recently assessed Tyler's language on a standardized assessment called the CELF5, and I just wanted to take some time tonight to walk you through the assessment and what subtests were on it and what we learned about Tyler and whether or not he qualifies for services. So I made a handout for you that I'll share with you both on my screen tonight, and I'll also email it to you. But just to start out, I defined some of the terms that you might see both on this assessment with some of these categories, but also I think you'll see them in documentation in future years to come. So I just wanted to write them out for you. I won't go through them right now, but you'll have this handout if you ever need to, understand what some of this speech pathology lingo is. I know it can be confusing, but I broke it down in more simple terms for you. So hopefully that's helpful. But just to start out, I wanted to help give you a big picture on what we just did with Tyler and what it's looking like right now. And like I said, we did the assessment called the CELF5 with Tyler to figure out what his current language skills are and also help determine what we can work on with him, find his strengths and then figure out maybe where some of his language breakdowns are and what we can help him with in speech therapy. And the test has 9 subtests. They're all listed right here under test scores. And then there's also these more general scores that are determined from this assessment as well that I can help explain. But each of these subtests assess various parts of language. They might help us assess Tyler's sentence comprehension, when someone's speaking to him, how much he can understand from that sentence. Different levels of complexity might get more harder for him. Simpler sentences are probably easier. And also what sentences he can produce, what level of sentence he can produce. Is it simple? Does it have more conjunctions in it to make it a compound sentence? Things like that. It helps assess. It helps assess his understanding of words and if he's using them correctly when he makes his own sentences, or if there are certain words or word types that he's struggling with that makes his comprehension of spoken language harder and more difficult for him. It helps assess grammar and little parts of words if he's using them correctly, like endings to words such as ing, or if he's using the appropriate plurals, things like that. And it even assesses his social skills, which has to do with this word pragmatics right here. And that has to do with social rules of communication, like knowing when to take turns in a conversation or knowing when not to say something, or even being able to ask for directions or for clarification when you don't understand something. Those are all part of this word right here, pragmatics, but we kind of just think of it as social skills almost as a simpler way. So, right here are the scores from his assessment. And I think that sometimes scores and percentile ranks can be kind of confusing. So, I more wanted to focus on what they mean for Tyler specifically. So, right here, this receptive language index, that just means language that Tyler can understand. When someone's speaking to him, what he can understand. And then expressive language index is how well he is using language to express himself. And so those are just general broad scores for, those 2 categories. And we learned that he is struggling in those areas, which are general areas of language. So that kind of helped identify to us that language as a whole is something that is difficult for Tyler that we can work on. And then just moving into the subtests, just to give you a brief understanding of each of them. Sentence comprehension, it helped us assess how well Tyler can understand the sentences. And if it gets more complex, does that get more challenging for Tyler? And he struggled in that area. Linguistic concepts, it tested his understanding of words and vocab and if he can understand, word meanings. Word structure helped assess how he can use language to make specific words and change the word endings and kind of his understanding of the structure, and sorry, his production of that structure, if he's able to produce it himself. Word classes, that assessed his understanding of words and word associations, and if he can know certain categories of words that go together. Following directions assessed his understanding of sentences. Formulated sentence assessed his production of sentences. Recalling sentences assessed if he could hear and remember a sentence and then repeat it. Understanding spoken paragraphs, that helped us assess how he can understand, a longer chunk, but then also express a sentence himself in response and answer questions. Um, and then and then the pragmatics we talked about was this one right here, just some of those social rules of communication. So there's a section on that. So within each of these subtests, we were able to see that between all of them, he scored on the very low end. And so we're recognizing that he has some difficulty in each of these areas. And in order to qualify for services, you need to be below the seventh percentile in two of the same areas of language. So, for example, sentence comprehension and word classes, those both assessed his understanding of words. And if when they're, being spoken to him, if he can understand what they mean and how to use them. So because he did below the seventh percentile, so you can see over here percentile rank was zero point 0.1 and 2, both below 7. Um, that helps us know that he qualifies for services. And so, what does that mean? What does that mean for Tyler now? Well, we identified some more specific struggles of Tyler's from this assessment, and we plan to do more assessing in each of these areas to really help us know what we can do to help Tyler, because this is just a standardized assessment. And I think there's lots of nuances when taking a standardized assessment that might make students perform more poorly, if it's a stressful situation, if there just weren't enough questions that tested a specific area, all of these things that we want to make sure we're really getting the best picture of Tyler's performance. So now that we've done this assessment, we're going to take some of these areas and learn even more about how Tyler's performing in them. And so we've identified some of these areas here for you that he struggles with. So, for example, he had some difficulty understanding temporal and spatial words, such as before, after, next to. He had trouble understanding word relationships and categories like banana and apple are both fruit. He had trouble understanding spoken directions because when someone's talking to him, he has trouble understanding that language he's hearing. And then, of course, it would be more difficult to follow those directions if he can't understand them. He has trouble after hearing a story, answering related questions to that story. He struggles with producing more complex sentences. We did identify that a strength is he can produce simpler sentences. That goes along with this word structure task that if you see here, he got a 7 on, and that actually was just slightly below average rather than more below than the other ones, pretty severe. And so because it was only slightly below average, it's helping us see that he can produce simple sentences correctly most of the time, which is something we can build on and help him then produce more complex sentences. And he also had a little bit of difficulty making inferences and predictions for the stories. So we identified specific things that Tyler has challenges with. And so now we're going to look into them even more. And then we'll be able to form some goals, and we'll work with you and we'll work with Tyler, and we'll help come up with goals that will benefit him in his daily life, with his socialization with friends and at school, to help him be the most successful and the happiest he can be. So we're looking forward to working with you guys more. We just wanted to give you this big picture, help you see where Tyler's at, what we learned, and where we'll go from here. So let us know if you have any questions, and we're excited to continue to get to work with you.